Hello, it's good to see you all. Welcome back to this Friday afternoon um, live stream over on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. My name is Dr. Julie Allig, and it is lovely to be here with you all. Do me a favor and put down in the chat where you are tuning in from. I'd love to know. So, today, what we're going to be talking about is what eating your vegetables has to do with running your business. You heard that right, eating your vegetables. And I picked on broccoli as the vegetable that I wanted to talk about because often we hear about the importance of working not just in our business, but on our business. Looking at your numbers is working on your business. It's not necessarily something that you might think is fun. It might not be something that you feel comfortable doing, but the way I think about it, because it's not the easiest thing for me either, the way I think about it is what kind of business owner do I want to be? I want to be the kind that is able to pivot, is able to change, is able to improvise when I find things that are working well and double down on them. And I want to be able to pull back or completely stop with the things that aren't going as well, that aren't getting me the outcomes that I had hoped for and that I had planned for. And the way to do that is to look at our numbers. But if there is one question I get asked when I'm talking with business owners and business professionals about looking at their numbers, it is, okay, Jules, but how often do I have to look at them, right? And it's kind of like broccoli, like eating broccoli or cauliflower or beets or sweet potatoes, right? Eating those vegetables. You look at them enough so that you are healthy. What does that really mean, right? So that's what I wanted to dig into today. So let's take this from the vantage point of what's going to happen in our business if we aren't looking at our numbers. And here, quick little tangent here, what numbers am I actually talking about? So certainly your revenue coming in, profit. That's the thing that I really have my students and my clients really focus on, not just the revenue, but the profit also that you're making. Those are definitely important, right? I think of those as what your accountant or your CFO or your bookkeeper can be telling you, right? Are you making money? Are you not making money? Are you in the black? Are you in the red? But how did you get to being in the black or being in the red? Dig down another layer or two from that, and those are the numbers that I want to talk to you about today, are important to monitor, and how regularly you want to be able to monitor those. So things like your customer retention rate, right? Maybe you're in the type of business where you measure customers or clients in terms of, do we keep them for 30 days or 90 days? Maybe you're in the type of business where you've got a longer time span. Maybe you're a law firm and you don't, your client turnover isn't so much 30 days or something. It might be, do we keep them for 2 years, for 5 years, for 7 years, that sort of thing? Do they come in using our estate and planning group, and then they move over to our commercial group and they expand out that way? That kind of client retention, right? So thinking about those numbers that are kind of the second and third level down from just whether or not you're in the black or in the red. These are the numbers that I want you to be looking at. And when I say look at them, what else did I want to talk about? Let's think. Yeah, we're talking about why it's important to know our business's health, right? So figuring out, well, if we don't look at our numbers, what could possibly happen? But what are some of the reasons why, as a business owner, you might not be looking at your numbers? Well, one, it might simply be that you're scared. You're scared of what they might tell you. You're scared that even though you're in the black, you're not quite sure why you're in the black. And so you don't want to mess with a good thing, like that sort of thing. To which I respond when people come up with this, to which I respond, don't you want to be even more in the black? So know exactly what's really working, exactly what's making you all of those profits, and let's just double down. It's like that flywheel kind of thing that Jim Collins in Good to Great talks about, right? Once you find something, you keep doing it and keep doing it, that consistency. Another reason why you might not be looking at your numbers at all is because you are an expert in whatever your business is all about. So I mentioned, a law firm earlier. You might be a lawyer. You might be someone who's an expert in applying the law. You might be maybe you're an insurance company owner, right? Maybe you've got a couple of agencies and boy, do you know how to package together policies. Maybe you are a standalone agent. You're not a captive agent. You're an independent agent, and you know how to shop among the 50 different personal lines for people with this particular profile, right? But when it comes to actually running a business, no one ever teaches you how to do that. I mean, you can go and get a degree in business, you can get an MBA. Even so, it really doesn't teach you how to run a business when you are actually in the weeds. And so looking at your numbers is not something that necessarily comes naturally. Sure, you know, you need an accountant, you need to be looking at those numbers, at your dollars and cents, but customer retention, employee retention, marketing channels, and the ROI on your different marketing channels, that's not necessarily something that just comes to mind or is top of mind necessarily when you start and are running a business. So that's my way of saying I'm not throwing shade at those of you who maybe you really aren't looking at your numbers very much because you're in the weeds of running a business, and this part of it wasn't something that maybe you ever got trained on, or maybe was made explicit to you that you needed to be doing. You do. And I count myself among those. I do too. It's hard to do, but I do. And you do too. The other thing that I hear that really gets in the way of businesses tracking their numbers is, where do I even find the numbers? Because it's not like there's integrated reports or dashboards across your accounting systems, your CRM system, your whatever system, right? It's not like there are necessarily those ready-made. You have individual ones, and they're built for individual purposes. But getting that kind of holistic view, that's a little more difficult, and that takes a little more effort to do, much less collect all those numbers and then standardize them, right? Believe me, I know I feel your pain there. So let's not guilt ourselves about not looking at this, not monitoring on a consistent basis. Let's just think about, what does it mean? Like, how often do you need to really? Is this something that's going to drive you bonkers? Is this something you need to be checking every hour of the day on your smartphone or something? No. Let's think about how often you really do need to be checking. And so, one of the things that I did to kind of prepare for this is I went out on LinkedIn and I asked people, so how often do you actually look at your numbers? And here's what y'all had to say. So, customer retention, sales trends, marketing ROI, those sorts of numbers. 2/3 of the respondents said they look at them weekly. That's great. That's awesome. Notice down here, this one, which somehow it didn't come over when I tried to snip it. The response was, I try not to look at them. No one responded that. The poll is still open over on LinkedIn. If you want to go to LinkedIn/in/Julie Allig, you can go among my posts and you can vote yourself. But no one said that, which was good, which was that kind of reassured me there. 2/3 say they look weekly, but then 17%, so a little less than 1 in 5 each, said they look monthly or they only look a couple of times a year. So that worried me. The couple of times a year, that worried me a little bit. But monthly, weekly, that's all good. And, you know, let me stop sharing my screen. There we go. There's the one thing is there's no hard and fast rule about how often you need to be looking at your numbers. I am not the type of person who says you have got to look at them every single day. You must look at them once a week. You must look at them once every 14 days. If for no other reason, I'm the type of personality where if you tell me I must do something, my knee-jerk reaction is, I'm not doing that, no matter what. So I'm a rebel personality type, if you know Gretchen Rubin and Happier and her types there. But if you want to be the kind of business owner who has a healthy, sustainable, profitable business, then you are going to look at your numbers. And what I tell people is you don't need to look at it necessarily every day, every week, every month, right? But you do need to look at it when things are not in a steady state. And so this concept of steady state is one that a former boss of mine, who was an engineer, actually threw into a conversation at one point, and it really resonated with me. I like this concept of things running on a understandable, regular, recognizable format, right? They're just humming along nicely. You know what to expect, and what you expect happens. And there's just this like regular rhythm to what's going on. I think when your business is running like that, you don't have to be looking at the numbers quite as often, right? So maybe monthly is just fine. Maybe a couple times a year even is just fine. I've got no idea who those respondents were on my poll. So it could be the case that their business is running just fine and they only need to look at it a couple of times a year. More power to them, really. Now, if things are not in a steady state, then you need to be looking more often. So what does it mean if something's not in a steady state? I think for businesses, think about, again, things are happening and you don't quite know Why? You can't quite predict what's going to happen next. Think of it like changes. And when changes are more unpredictable, I'm looking at my data more often. When changes are more predictable, right? More of a steady state, I'm looking at my numbers less often. So, what might be a time when you are looking at your numbers very, very regularly? In fact, you might be looking day to day, depending on the kind of business you're in, or the kind of clients, or the kind of change that you've implemented. You might need to look every day, or a couple of times a week, or once a week, or something. So let's say you're a restaurant and you open up a new location. That's a big change. And in that instance, you're going to be wanting to look at your numbers very regularly until you start seeing that there is a pattern, and the pattern just keeps extending itself, keeps playing itself out. Maybe you're a law firm and you open in a different city. Maybe you are a restaurant and you serve breakfast and lunch, and all of a sudden, in response to customer feedback, you say, why not just stay open for dinner also? You're going to be watching that. You're going to be watching your customer retention. You're going to be watching your average check. You're going to be looking at days of the week, months of the year, breakdown of that average check between beverages and entrees and sides and alcohol once it's, evening and it's cocktail hour, that sort of thing. That you don't know what the pattern's going to be. You got no idea. So you're going to be monitoring that very closely. Once you start seeing that established pattern, then you can kind of pull back a little bit and start looking a little less frequently. What might be another? If you are let's say you're an insurance firm, an insurance agency, and let's talk about like homeowners insurance, selling that. There are right now in the industry, we're filming in early August of 2023, and there's a lot of turmoil in the United States in the homeowners insurance industry. There are some very big insurers that are pulling out completely, or pulling out. They're not completely pulling out of, let's say, California or Florida or Louisiana. They're putting their agents on notice that they aren't going to be writing any new homeowners policies in those states. That's a heck of a change, and that's going to have a ripple effect. So if you're an insurance agency, or you've got a couple of agencies that you own down in Florida, and you do personal and homeowners, and you see this coming in the industry all of a sudden, how are you going to react to that? What kind of risk can you take on yourself? And how is that going to impact the balance in your business's portfolio among your revenues, among the losses, the premiums, all of that? Once you start to see how it settles, then you can pull back a little bit and keep monitoring a little less frequently. What's one other? One big change that I want to talk about is, what about laying people off, or simply eliminating positions, firing people? That's a big change. And that's a change in not just your company and its offerings, but it's also a change in your company culture. So if I put on my HR hat, my people analytics hat, that's the sort of thing where I'm going to want to be really measuring the different indicators for company culture, employee engagement, employee satisfaction, how much overtime the rest of the employees that didn't get laid off are needing to pick up that slack or something. What do our customers have to say Do our customers notice that there's a decrease in performance? Something like that. That's something that, again, a big change that you're going to want to keep an eye on very closely for a while until things start to steady out. Something like that, I would think that you would want to be monitoring that probably weekly, depending on the kind of industry you're in, maybe a couple of times a week too, and depending on how extensive those cuts were. But you see kind of what I'm trying to get at here. It's much less, and this is where looking at your numbers analytically, doing this kind of analysis for your business is really much more of an art than a science. And if you've been following me for any length of time, you've probably heard me talk about the art and the science of analytics. So many times people think that the numbers are what they are and just follow the numbers. They're there in black and white. And that's the road to success. That's not always the road to success. There's always that art, the interpretation of it, the fact that we're humans and we're living these numbers in very real ways. So that's why I wanted to say a few words about how often you need to be monitoring your numbers, because when it comes down to it, you need to be monitoring them especially closely during times of big change, and less closely, but still monitoring, right? Still looking at them, less closely in times of steady state. And what you want to be able to get to is some form of steady state. It's going to look different for every business. And some businesses might be steadier than others. But at the end of the day, that's what you want to be looking for. Because once you have an understanding of that foundation, then you can really start planning and building and growing. Because you've got a firm foundation. And that foundation is all your numbers and all your analytics, maybe even a dashboard or two in there, depending. But anyway, I am going to jump off. I'm glad you stayed here with me through this. Let me know what you thought of this. Let me know if you think I'm on the right track or not. Were you expecting me to say you must monitor every third day and twice on Fridays or something like that? Are you surprised by what I'm talking about here? The whole idea of being able to really understand and know your business and the patterns in your business, and the idea of steady state versus lots of variability. Let me know if that makes sense or if I need to clarify that anymore, because this, I am convinced, this is going to be the way for you to really grow your business. So until next week, go forth and analyze.